So we are now going to have a panel of experts. Robin, you want to come up and sit up here? And if you want, I just want to make sure that everyone knows who you are too. But we're going to have a panel of who have really been leading the way at a national level and helping us to learn about fathers and fatherhood programs and what works. I'm going to take just a second to talk with you a little bit about broadly kind of our evolving understanding of fathers and some of the fatherhood research, but they're really going to fill in all of the gaps. And Professor Mency really started us off this morning with much more information than I will provide. But I just wanted to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page when it comes to our understanding about father involvement and father engagement with their kids. So we have, as everyone has kind of already said today, that there really has been an evolution in our understanding of father involvement, and that we always used to really just focus on the mom and kid. And then there was this growing emphasis on how to get dads involved, but really as the financial provider. And because of work that was done in the Fragile Families Study and others, we came to understand that dads, they mean a lot more to a family than just money. And that sounds so ridiculous to say that the studies hadn't been done. We had no theory that people would actually have to study this to prove that dads mattered. And it made people who have been serving dads and working with families for a long time kind of say, okay, so that's why we think that people with their PhD don't know anything. But over the last couple of decades, we really have started to increase our funding and increase our attention and increase the resources that we have to really support families. At the federal level, they've been funding several different programs, which our folks will talk even more about. But there's really 4 areas that our fatherhood programs focus on, and some focus on all, some focus more or less on one. And so one is father involvement, and whether dads get access to seeing their kids, whether dads see their kids more regularly. And we, as Ron said this morning, we have pretty crude measures of what involvement actually means, but it started off with just access, and it's moved into understanding about the quality of that engagement between dad and child. We also have programs that focus on economic stability. Ron talked so much this morning about the importance of being able to have a job in order to provide for your families, and that the economic stability of so many of our dads has really declined. And so our programs work to try to engage fathers in the labor market and improve their economic stability. These programs are often linked with child support, which is obviously an important component for a lot of our unmarried fathers. The other area, which first grew out of kind of the healthy marriage push, but then more and more into understanding that the relationship between the mom and dad, regardless if they are married, is the single biggest predictor of whether dad is going to be involved in providing with his child. That is so important that we've tried to figure out how in our programs and services we can enhance that co-parenting relationship and to build the relationship between the mom and dad. There's also been a growing emphasis on child abuse and prevention. And of course, that is the overall mission of prevention and early intervention that's really funding this conference. But they understand that all of these things are also part of reducing stress and increasing family stability, which are part of that prevention work. As much as we have served our dads, we really don't understand how effective our programs are. And that is not just true in the fatherhood field. It's true kind of throughout. But there really has not been a lot of research to date. The research you're going to hear about is what we know. And you're going to hear that we have learned some things, but there's a lot left to learn. And a lot of our programs that we've studied have focused on resident fathers, Sometimes our earlier studies were focused on even more engaged fathers or married fathers. And we have some new information on non-resident fathers in terms of our program's effectiveness, but not as much as we want. And so that's an area where we're really trying to learn more. With regard to father involvement, I'm just going to go over these really briefly. But there is a variety of curricula out there that have shown to enhance various outcomes, their comfort in the idea of being a dad, their perceptions of their relationship with their child, their shared parenting, the parental responsibility, their understanding of child development, which is often a really fundamental piece of knowledge that dads need to know what to do with their kids, what to expect from their children. The 24/7 Dads program has a relatively new evaluation of their Hawaii program, and there they found that dads who went through the program are more likely to read with their children, to help them with their homework. They're also more likely to be happy about being a parent and to have a higher quality relationship with their child, particularly their firstborn. So that program went through a random controlled trial and found that there were some positive impacts of that program. And it's a program that's being used in several of our communities here in Texas. With regard to economic stability, there's been a number of programs, and these programs often include such things as mentoring or job assistance. Our Young Dads program is one that provides really comprehensive services to fathers, and that program seemed to show some positive influences on getting dads jobs. Improving wages has always been the sticky wicket in this, and that's not the responsibility of the programs. It's kind of a larger economy thing, as you saw from Ron's talk this morning. Within our healthy relationships, there's really been an emphasis again on building like healthy marriages, but we have focused more and more on our parents in terms of co-parenting, not just on their personal relationship with each other. And we have had a few studies that have shown quality of relationship with the child's mother, reduced stress and levels of support. One example is Dads for Life. It worked with recently divorced fathers. And within that, there weren't strong effects on co-parenting, but there was kind of a more positive post-divorce parental relationship and parenting relationship. Again, we need more information. With regard to child abuse and prevention, this is really, these programs are more about building these protective actions and factors and capacities rather than just focusing on the risk factors. So focusing on nurturing and attachment, knowledge of parenting and child development, connection to social support and others. And at present, the programs are more parent-focused versus father or mother-specific. One example of a program that has shown some influences on reducing substantiated child maltreatment and out-of-home placement is the PPP Positive Parenting Program. It's kind of a multi-system program that has kind of a community-wide approach, a more comprehensive approach, and a very targeted approach for teaching skills. And a random controlled trial of that across the country has shown some positive outcomes there. There's another program that's kind of a promising program. It hasn't necessarily been evaluated yet rigorously, but it is a father-specific program, the Caring Dads program, helping fathers value their children. This is targeting fathers after they have been accused of abusing or neglecting their children. And so it's more of a reactive program versus a prevention program. The folks here today are going to tell you more and more about what we still don't know and what we do know and what we need. But I do encourage you, the programs that I've been working with are so open to being evaluated, so open to learning what's working and what's not, so they can share those results. We know in the world of kind of evidence-based policymaking that it's important that you can show evidence that you are working. In a land of scarce resources, people are calling you out and want to know, are you making the differences that you say you are? And so I applaud the kind of willingness and commitment to being evaluated, and we're going to need to do that more and more. There are currently several different evaluations that are going on at the federal level that are cross-site evaluations, and that's what the folks here are going to be sharing with. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but from the PACT evaluation, which is a multi-site random controlled trial, telling us about really the effectiveness of our programs. Another one that is, I love the acronym FAMILY, which is a kind of also lots of sites that are doing smaller evaluations to really understand what it is that's working, what are some of the elements that work best. Our Building Bridges and Bonds, or B3 project, this is going to tell us whether there's some additional elements of our programs that could be really effective, help us to learn more about retention and other sorts of challenges that our programs have had. And then there's a federally funded Fatherhood Research and Practice Network that has brought together a lot of scholars that are studying fatherhood and also have been funding local programs to try and get even just smaller scale evaluations so that we can really learn how do we improve our programs, how do we ensure that they're successful. So again, that's just a broad brush of what we know and what we still need to learn. And I wanted to introduce our panelists today, and they're each going to take a few minutes to describe their program to tell you, or their evaluation, to tell you about what it is that they're trying to do, what it is they're trying to learn from them, and they'll share the findings that they have to date. But we really have the three leaders in the field. The first that's going to share, I'll introduce them all now, and then they'll come up in turn, is Robin Dion, and she is a senior fellow at Mathematica Policy Research. And this group is leading both the PACT and the family evaluations. And Robin has been involved with this work for a long time, not forever because she's only like 30 years old, but, right. But for about 29 years of those 30, I think. No, she's been with Mathematica for 20 years at least, right? And has been involved in nearly every major initiative that the feds have launched, and was really instrumental in helping us to learn about the Healthy Marriage Initiatives, and oversaw the Building Strong Families project, which, as Ron said, although it didn't show the effects that we were looking for, it taught us a lot about what works and what doesn't. The second panelist is Jessica Pearson. And she is the director and founder of the Center for Policy Research in Denver. And we were glad that she could fly out yesterday because they did get actual snow, but their planes still fly when they get snow. She has been a leader in the child support world for also ever. And she has really been influential in so many ways in helping states understand how to set the right child support guidelines and so forth. But she's done two things that I know she never gets credit enough for. And one is her early research on the paternity establishment process and how important that was, and how we needed to make it simpler for men to do. And through her efforts, that it really led to the ability for the requirement that states allow a simple administrative process in the hospital that dads can establish paternity. And that's no small feat. It's a really big deal. And she's also been a leader in helping us to understand about father's access and visitation and how important a connection that is to his ability to pay and willingness to pay child support. She's the co-director of the Family Research Fatherhood Research and Practice Network. She is going to share with you their efforts in that way. And Ginger Knox is the director of the Family and Children Policy Group at MDRC. And Ginger is, when you first meet her, is very quiet, and you would never know that she has really been at the head or involved with so much of what we know about supporting families in poverty and throughout our welfare reform. She was either the director of or co-director of the Parents' Fair Share evaluation, and She did work in the healthy marriage thing with our divorced families, and she is leading the evaluation at the federal level of our home visiting programs, and she's leading the evaluation work of the Building Bridges and Bonds. We really have folks who know everything that there is to know. Unfortunately, we don't know everything. I feel like Donald Rumsfeld right now, so I'm not going to go down that path. But they're each going to share with you what it is they do know, and then I'll ask them some questions, and we'll open up to more from you guys. So thank you. Please join me in welcoming our panelists.
Thank you, Cynthia. Everybody hear me okay? I have this soft little voice, and I'm always worried that you can't hear me. So I have a lot of material to cover, and I want to dive right in and start talking about it. Unfortunately, there's no way I'm going to be able to sort of summarize the 450 pages worth of reports that we have released so far, but hopefully I'll be able to get to the point where I can share a few of the selected findings from the reports. Can somebody put up the slides? Oh, okay. Aha, there we go. Okay, so as Cynthia mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the Parents and Children Together evaluation. This is a large-scale, multi-component research study being conducted by Mathematica. It focuses on a subset of grantees from the Administration of Children and Families 2011 cohort of fatherhood grantees. I want to talk about a few of the findings from there. I might, if I have time, mention a little bit about family and the cross-site project that Cynthia mentioned. That particular project is ongoing and focuses on the entire cohort of 2015 fatherhood grantees. But I'm probably not going to say too much about that. So let me introduce PACT. First of all, this is a large-scale, multi-site, rigorous evaluation of both healthy marriage and responsible fatherhood programs. And it's sort of designed into 4 separate pieces. And these are sort of the main research questions that we're trying to address in each of them. First, we have a qualitative study in which we're really trying to understand better who these fathers are that are voluntarily enrolling in these fatherhood programs, and we want to hear from them, what their perspectives are on and what their experiences have been in terms of being fathers and providers and partners. Where do they think the challenges are, and where would they appreciate help? In the second part of the study, we are looking at the implementation, the design and implementation of the programs that are intended to serve these fathers. What works to enroll fathers and get them participated and that sort of thing. In the third part of the study, this is the random assignment component where we really are looking at program effectiveness here. Do these programs actually result in changes in fathers' behavior in terms of father involvement, contact with children, financial support of children, activities with children, that sort of thing. And then finally, we have a separate study where we're looking specifically at fatherhood programs that have been designed for Hispanic fathers. And this is sort of gets to the cultural component that Ron Mincy was talking about earlier. How are these programs that are intended for Hispanic fathers, how are they designed, how are they received by Hispanic fathers? So the PACT study uses a variety of different study methods. You're going to have these slides in your little thumb drives to take back with you, so I'm not going to go through everything here, but suffice it to say that we collect a great deal of data on enrollment, participation. We go out to the sites, speak with the staff, observe operations. In terms of the qualitative study, we do take sort of an ethnographic type of approach. This component is led by Dr. Kathy Eden, some of you may be familiar with. These are one-on-one, in-depth, face-to-face interviews with fathers in which they're more like conversations. These are not structured interviews, but rather the fathers are allowed to come forward and say what they think. And then the third part, of course, is based on experimental research methods with random assignment to either the program or to a control group. We take their information at baseline, and then we also survey them 12 months after they enroll in the programs. And of course, then the objective is to compare the outcomes of the two groups. So the current status, we are studying 4 particular programs in this part of the study. This is in mostly Missouri, Kansas City, Minnesota. We wound up the study enrollment just about 1 year ago with 5,522 fathers. So lots of fathers to look at here. At this point, we're just completing the follow-up survey. We've got a 71% response rate so far. Hopefully that will continue to grow. And we've also completed the first 2 waves of data collection in the qualitative study and about to go into the field for the third one. Here's just sort of a portrait of who these fathers are that enrolled in this program. In these 4 programs, I should say. On average, in general, they are low-income African-American men who have lower levels of education. Only 50% of them had any recent paid work in the month prior to the baseline survey. A full 73% of them had criminal convictions in their past, sadly. Now, in terms of the family structure, they because they are a little bit older perhaps, they do have multiple children on average, and a good portion of them have children by multiple mothers, but almost 80% of them do not live with any of their children. So these are primarily non-residential fathers. Nevertheless, many of them found a way to spend some time with at least some of their children in the month prior to the baseline survey. So here I just want to pick out a few findings from the qualitative study. How am I doing on time? Okay. One of the things that we learned in the baseline survey and also in the something that came through loud and clear in the qualitative interviews was that the main reason that the fathers said that they enrolled in these programs was to improve their relationships with their children. So getting a job was important too, and that was their second reason. But their first reason was they really wanted to be better fathers and become more involved with their children. This was something that came up over and over again. It was overwhelming. They said that they really appreciated the parenting workshops. They told us stories. So the narratives were mostly about childhoods that were full of poverty and father absence and a lot of family dysfunction, family instability, substance abuse, those kinds of things. Really left these dads unprepared to be fathers in the way that they wanted to be. And in fact, lots of this instability sort of led them into criminal activities, and many times as youth, which led them into incarceration. And that's why we have this high number of criminal convictions and so forth. But what the important point is that at some point after they became fathers, either at the time of their child's birth or later when their children got a little bit older, they just came to this realization that fatherhood became a catalyst for them to turn their lives around, to be to make positive changes in their own lives and for the lives of their children in particular. let me just mention one of the most common barriers that we saw that the fathers told us about when we asked about, what blocked them from being more involved fathers was really limited access to their children. We heard stories about lots and lots of conflicted, hostile, contentious relationships with the mothers of their children, which in their view led to a great deal of gatekeeping and difficulty getting access to the child. Let me go to the next one. So this suggests that one of the things that practitioners may want to think about doing is improving the father's access to the children. So obviously, one place to go is to try to help fathers secure legal parenting time orders so that they have something, that they can show that they have the right to have access to the children. Another thing that fatherhood programs are in a good position to do is really to try to resolve some of the co-parenting conflicts, perhaps through mediation methods or even just helping them develop a co-parenting plan, for example. Let me just go to the last bit. I'm going to skip over to some of the findings from the implementation study. One of the interesting things that we found was that these programs not only focused on the 3 core services required by the grants, which were focused on parenting, relationship skills, and economic stability, but they all really felt it was important to include content that was focused on what they call father development, or personal development. So really has to do with things like setting goals and interpersonal skills, coping with stress, problem solving, decision making, that sort of thing. We also found that all the programs partnered with their local child support agency, but the assistance that they provided really ranged from very, very limited to very, very extensive. And you'll find in the report some really interesting creative strategies that 2 of the 4 programs were using to increase participation of the fathers in the program through reduction of child support arrearages, for example. And one program co-located child support staff within the Responsible Fatherhood program, which really helped them have better access to those staff that could help them, modify child support orders as needed and that sort of thing. In terms of participation, and I'm going to end, initial participation was really pretty high for these programs. About 80% of all fathers who were assigned to the program group attended at least one of the activities. Retention, however, ongoing participation and completion was not nearly as positive. But we found that retention was best in particular types of programs, in particular cohort-based programs. And then the last really important point was that the relationship skills component of these programs were actually the least attended. And that's really interesting because it suggests that there is kind of a mismatch between what these relationship skills classes are teaching and between what the fathers really need. The fathers are telling us they need help with co-parenting, with getting access to their children and that sort of thing. And sometimes these relationship skills components are designed more for parents who are in romantic relationships and building commitment and that sort of thing. So we may want to think about the relevance of that component and also increasing their accessibility. So I'm going to just end there. Again, you have these slides. Here is a list of the published reports and ones that are forthcoming. These are the websites where you can access those reports. And there's also just a little blurb here about the Family Cross-Site Project. Thank you.
I'm gratified to see that there are research findings now supporting the importance of parenting time and access. I got to say, we did our first study for Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement on this issue over 30 years ago, and we are still waiting. We're still producing findings after findings about the importance of parenting time and legal access, and policy works slowly. So, policy change. Anyway, I'm here to talk today about the Fatherhood Research and Practice Network. It is a network, a federally funded initiative to build the evidence base in the fatherhood field. And I co-directed with Jay Fagan of Temple University. We have a kind of intimate, small core team, it's augmented by a larger group of some consultants and mostly unpaid steering committee members that include Cynthia and Ron Mincy, Michael Hayes, some of the Texas fatherhood practitioners. Richard Noriega is on a steering committee, and others. And I guess for the first time in my life, after hunting and going after grants and being a grant creature, I'm actually giving out awards, sub-awards, which has its own challenges, and trying to wisely encourage effective practitioner researcher collaborations and the generation of more evidence-based information about fatherhood programs. So this 5-year initiative, and we're about at halftime, 2.5 years into it, is funded by OPRI, the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation of Department of Health and Human Services. Anna Solmeyer is our program officer. She's also the program officer of Building Bridges and Bonds that you'll be hearing about. And there are 3 major goals. Promote rigorous evaluation of fatherhood programs through grant making, as well as some core activities, research activities that the FRPN team is doing and will be doing. That's Temple and Center for Policy Research, provide technical assistance and training to researchers and fatherhood programs, and disseminate information to improve effective fatherhood research and practice. And we're really interested in reaching all kinds of practitioners, programs, those that are funded by OFA, the federal the entity that's supporting this new round of fatherhood grants, as well as those that are not, fatherhood programs in various institutional settings, home visiting, as well as community-based programs or programs associated with child support and child protection, et cetera. And so those are our 3 main goals. One goal number 1, is to build the evidence base, and effective January 1st, four evaluation research projects began, and they all involve random assignment, randomized controlled trials, small scale. Our budget for all of these 4 projects was $350,000. So 3 at $100,000, 1 at $50,000, and those grants and practitioners are listed here, and they're approximately halfway through. We have another round, and there is an RFP out. Letters of interest are due this Friday by close of business Eastern Standard Time, or maybe it's midnight. Go to the website. But anyway, we will be putting out approximately $700,000 more of awards, and we're looking for a broader range. Rigorous studies, they could be RCTs, but they could also be quasi-experimental designs, qualitative research, replication studies. So, and we're looking for teams comprised of researchers, practitioners, and they, in non-prison settings, non-institutional settings, we are focusing on low-income, understudied, underserved fathers. Those are typically never married or unmarried, non-resident fathers. We feel a lot of the research, there's still needs in all of these areas, but to the extent there is research, it has often looked at married, divorced, and resident fathers. In addition, the Temple team at Temple and FRP, CPR, my firm, will be doing some research on maternal engagement and co-parenting, so that's our next project to build the evidence base. We are deeply involved with trying to build evaluation capacity. This is all on the FRPN website, but we offer Evaluation 101 programs at a lot of practitioner conferences, kind of like this summit. We're going to be doing that in Ohio at New England Fatherhood Conference. We did one with NPCL last year in Philadelphia, and we'll be at Kansas City, and these are one-day seminar or programs on evaluation. You get a Temple University certificate, social work credits. We have webinars periodically. The next one will be in April. We have briefs about various types of research issues. We've developed and validated new measures of outcome for fatherhood programs that are specifically designed to be used with unmarried, non-resident fathers, and those are on our website along with little videos about how to administer them. We do a lot of conference presentations. Go to the website, www.frpn.org. It has all of our resources. It's all free. There's a listserv, so if you're looking to hook up with a researcher who's in your area, you can find one another, vice versa. Researchers can find programs, and these are some of the briefs we've written about key research issues that come up in fatherhood research. These are the webinars, which are all posted on the website. We just had a webinar about measuring outcomes for non-resident fathers. We had another webinar on co-parenting and how to engage mothers and how fatherhood programs have attempted to do this. Robin was with us on our first webinar dealing with randomized controlled trials for the PACT evaluation. They're all recorded and they're all on the website. And these are the fatherhood measures that we've developed. The co-parenting measure will be, the validation study will be finished shortly, and those will be posted as well. So they're measures to assess contact, how much time fathers spend with children, and what they do with them, who makes decisions, challenges fathers experience, and how they engage in both play and caregiving activities. Okay, I wanted to, this isn't a classic research study, so I just have some observations based on our 2.5 years doing this, working with a lot of fatherhood programs and practitioners and researchers. First, there's strong interest in research. A lot of turnout, a lot of people are nervous about negative findings and inconclusive findings, but they get it. It's not just for funding, although it is also for funding reasons, but they're interested in research. Second, we need measures that are more tailored for non-resident, never married fathers, because a lot of them that are being used are been developed with resident fathers, and they just don't work with people who don't live with their children regularly. The issues, the challenges of recruiting, engaging, retaining fathers remains huge in this field. It's the same as we experienced 25 years ago. We have And practitioners and researchers especially, do not understand that, and then are shocked when they get very, very low response rates or low retention. A lot of interest in engaging mothers. You'll hear that from all of us in co-parenting. Incentives remain very, very important. Child support, arrears, yes, but also driver's license reinstatement. Very, very important. And funding, and the lack of funding continues to plague this field and shape it. This is how to reach us, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you for having me. Oh, there we are. So unlike Robin and Jessica, I'll be talking about a study that's in its early stages. We don't have any findings yet, but I'll be able to talk about all the exciting things we will be learning about. So as you can tell from all the logos at the bottom of this slide, this is a partnership between several organizations. Like both these other two initiatives, Building Bridges and Bonds, or B3, is funded by the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation at HHS. And MDRC is leading the study. We're partnering with MEF Associates to operate the study, and APT SRBI will be doing our field data collection follow-up surveys. So B3 is going to be using a random assignment design, just as PACT did, to study innovative new services that will be offered by responsible fatherhood programs or reentry programs. We're currently in our site selection phase, and our sites are going to be coming from the current round of OFA grantees who are just now launching their programs. So we think B3 is a unique opportunity to bring together both programs and researchers to produce evidence about some specific new approaches to fatherhood services. So what we're doing is, instead of randomly assigning people to receive the entire fatherhood program or not, which is the way many studies work, in this case, in each local program, we'll have one group of fathers who gets the regular set of fatherhood services that are offered, and then another group who will get that set of services plus an enhanced set of services, some kind of extra piece of the program. And then we're going to be studying the difference that this new piece of the program makes in fathers' outcomes compared to the regular fatherhood program. We came up with the different pieces that we'd like to study through a series of conversations, meetings with stakeholders in the fatherhood field, reviewing the current evidence and research about the challenges that fatherhood programs face. And we came up with 3 different priorities that I'll be interested in hearing what you think about. But a lot of what Ron Mincy and others have said this morning it's been helpful to me. It sort of affirms the directions that we went. The three areas we're going to focus on primarily are employment outcomes for dads, developing their parenting skills, and testing new tools for programs to use in engaging and retaining fathers over time. So we can really think of these almost as 3 separate studies, although they're all under one umbrella. The first test we'll be doing is of enhanced employment services. So a big challenge for programs, of course, is how to help fathers not just gain that first job, but also to gain jobs that help them have higher earnings over time than they could have found on their own without attending the program. So one of the ways to do this is to help people stay in their jobs with more stability over time so that they can start kind of increasing their wages and climbing the ladder to higher earnings over time. To move in this direction for very disadvantaged men, particularly those who might have some history in the criminal justice system, what we'd like to do is test some employment services or workshops that are explicitly informed by cognitive behavioral principles that are being increasingly used in social service settings. The idea is to help dads, once they gain a job, help them avoid the kinds of behaviors on the job that might threaten their employment. So we're developing this curriculum. We had been developing it before this study began with folks at the University of Cincinnati, and it's called a Cognitive Behavioral Employment Curriculum, or CBE. So what CBE includes is several modules that fathers will go through over time. The first two kind of lay the foundation so that fathers are motivated and understand what they'll be learning about. And then the facilitator uses a lot of direct practice with the dads to develop some skills for the workplace. So the first part of the curriculum is motivational engagement, which is really aimed at increasing the dad's confidence about gaining and maintaining employment. They talk about how this program can help them with some patterns that they might have experienced in their thinking and their behavior that could lead to some barriers to employment. And then the curriculum actually starts to introduce the idea that your thought patterns matter and that your thoughts are what lead to your behavior. And the facilitator starts to teach participants how to identify risky thoughts that may lead to trouble succeeding in work and keeping jobs over time. The third module is called Skills for Work, and that includes both social skills and emotion regulation. So in this, they start to practice changing their risky thought patterns that are likely to arise at work, as well as identifying and managing uncomfortable situations or intense emotions that might come up in workplace disagreements or other kind of tricky situations. The fourth module is about problem-solving skills, and the facilitator teaches dads specific steps in problem solving, and then they role play how those might look in different workplace circumstances. And then the last two modules are building in a kind of a little bit more traditional employment workshops for gaining employment. Those include success planning. They work with each father on an individualized employment plan that builds on his own goals and his background. And then the last piece is sort of concrete job-seeking skills like resume building and interview skills and practice. So that is the employment study of B3 that we hope to be launching by this summer. The second part of the study is about the study of new parenting services. And as we all know and have heard about today, many low-income non-resident fathers are very interested in having stronger relationships with their children. The most recent research literature suggests that from the perspective of child well-being, what matters is not just the quantity of time that fathers are able to spend with their children, but also the quality of their interactions. So some of the key challenges in building these parenting services are, how to help fathers build parenting skills through practice when they're not living with their children, and then how to do this when there may be co-parenting conflict between the two parents, so that the father-child relationship isn't undermined by issues between the two parents. So we thought that the most promising approaches we might want to try out as enhancements would have two features. One is we really wanted a curriculum that involved both the father and the child so that the father could get some direct practice and feedback about how he's interacting with his child. So research on parenting programs for mothers has really found that it's very effective to give kind of real-time feedback to parents after observing them playing with their child, and that really helps to build their skills. And we also knew that we needed some kind of attention or materials for the co-parent so that she would understand the program and would feel okay about having her child participate. So we did find a program of this type, and actually Ron mentioned at the very end of his talk that he's involved in a program that's been done in prisons with fathers when their young children or babies visit them in prison. And it turns out that's actually the program that we have decided to test in B3, which is, it was called Baby Elmo, and now they've actually changed the name to Just Beginning, but it was called Baby Elmo because it uses Sesame Street parenting videos as one of its materials to help get across the lessons of the curriculum. So this program does have a direct interaction between the father and the child, and we will be testing it in community fatherhood programs while Ron was talking about studying it further in prison settings, which is where it first originated. So it's attractive because it was designed specifically for fathers. And we do know that this kind of program will be challenging to implement because, of course, we need to get the child to the program and able to participate with the father. So we will be working with fathers who have some access already to their children. And we'll be offering orientations and materials for co-parents so that they will know also what the program is all about. As I mentioned, it's called Just Beginning. That's the name of the curriculum. And for the fathers, there are sort of three main elements to the program. One is that the staff set up a play space so that the room is baby-friendly or child-friendly. Then there are direct training sessions between the staff and the father to introduce a skill at the beginning of a session. So they talk through sort of what a particular interaction might look like with his child. And then then the child is brought in, and the child and the father have a play session, and he practices that one skill that he heard about that day. And then they debrief afterwards, so the staff give him some feedback on how he felt like that went and give him some examples of what they liked that he did that day. So I'm going to have to speed up because my time is up, but in the slides you'll have that you'll take home. These are the 5 kind of skills that fathers learn about, positive, responsive parenting skills in the course of this parenting program. And then the third piece, which I'll just mention really quickly, is we will be testing out some enhanced engagement strategies. And the thing that we're actually hoping to do in B3, all of these 3 are still in development, but these are all areas we're hoping to test out starting this summer. In the case of engagement, we're hoping to test out an app, actually, that would be aimed at helping fathers to plan their participation in the program, to identify things that might keep them from coming to the program, and would send him reminders and encouragement and other ways of staying engaged. And so it's a use of mobile technology to kind of be an extra sort of tool for the staff so that we draw on sort of the increased use of smartphones and mobile technology by parents. The other piece that this app we're hoping we'll be able to do is after the 5 sessions of the Just Beginning program are over, for example, the app could send him sort of reminders about the skills that he learned so that it extends the reach of the program past the time that he was in it to encourage him to keep using those interactions with his child when he does see his child. So it's a nice sort of low-cost way of extending his memory of what he learned in the program and encouraging and reminding him to use those skills. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.